Hi, I'm Steve Sink, also known as Pagan Zero. I'm going to teach you today to do something that I haven't even really kind of named yet. Let's call it a moving Mandel-Block TV. Basically what I'm going to do is take an image, turn it into a 4x4 block, grid block, and then map an image onto each one of those blocks, and then rotate the blocks around. And then it's going to look something like this. Okay, there's going to be a couple of parts to this. Part one is going to be finding our image and turning it into a 4x4 grid of 16 images. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Photoshop and open up our image. You could use GIMP or some other program, but I don't. This tutorial will tell you how to do it with Photoshop. So I have a Photoshop image here, this picture, Ego the Living Planet, from Marvel Comics that I made about a week ago. And what I'm going to do to it, I need to make this into a 4x4 grid. So what I need is a square picture. The first thing I'm going to do is turn this to square. I have a logo on this. We're just going to kill my logo, but let's see. I can just delete that layer out, actually. I want to turn this square, so let me go over to the crop tool. And then I want to crop this down roughly square. But I want to leave in some of these little flame things here. I like that. That's good enough. That'll take us close enough. Then I'm going to go up here to image size. This was originally a 4K image turned sideways. I'm going to change it to 3000 by 3000. I'm slightly stretching it just a little bit. We're going to enlarge it. There we go. We have a nice square image. You can use any image you want, of course. Next to the crop tool, on the same toolbar, we have, if I can get it going here, looking for the slice tool right here, slice tool. I'm going to slice this up into a grid. Control A to select all of the image. I'm going to right click on it and just divide slice, and then it gives me a choice to divide horizontally and divide vertically. I'm going to divide into 4 slices down and 4 slices across, and that's going to make 750 by 750 pixel grid sub pictures for us. Simple as that. We now have a 4x4 grid here, and we want to just save these out to individual files. Okay, I want to save this out. I'm going to save all these slices out. I'm going to go to export, save for web legacy. I'm going to right click on all this, put fit on screen, drag a box across all of my slices to select all of my slices. Go up here to PNG 8. I'm not going to change any of my other settings. It says the size is 3000 by 3000, but it's actually going to save each of those individual slices. As long as I have slices, all slices selected. On my desktop, I'm going to make a new folder real quick and call it slices, and put every one of these slices inside there. Save like that, and we don't think it's doing anything, but it is. It's going to disappear here in a second, and we have now saved all those slices. I also want to save this whole background image. Save as. Let's go into my desktop under the slices folder that I just created, and we're going to save this image also as just a PNG, and this is going to be our background image underneath our bricks. Save it as small size. Okay, so we have taken our image, we have basically made it into a square size, we broke it up into 16 slices, and we exported those 16 slices out, and we also exported the entire image out. So we are actually done with Photoshop. No need to save that. And we'll look at our slices folder here on my desktop. Slices, and we'll see we have the PNG as our background image, nice square, and then inside, in this folder called Images, we have 16 750 by 750 pixel size PNGs running from 1 through 16, and our grid goes 1, 2, 3, 4 across, and then the next row 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the next row 8, 9, 10, 11, and the next row 10, 11, 12, 13, making a 4x4 grid when we're done. Hopefully. Okay, that completes our slicing portion. Next, we're going to roll into Mandelbulber. For Mandelbulber, what I'm going to do here is we've got the default Mandelbulber. I'm going to go over to image size. And for right now, just for playing around, I'm going to make that, we're going to make our proportion 1 by 1, 600 by 600. We're going to go over to our object here and just turn the Mandelbulb off. I have auto refresh on here in my settings so that I can auto refresh. I am eventually going to make this background, that background image that we saved, but for right now, because it's going to get confusing, I'm going to leave this exactly the way it is. I need to set up the, I need to set up Mandelbulber first though. The default settings are going to put us not facing the exact perfect way to make this easy. We're at an angle, and so if we place Mandelbulber directly facing forward, we'll be able to do this a lot easier. I'm also going to, down here where we have grid crosshair, you might have thirds grid or golden ratio. I usually have thirds grid, and that makes 9 squares. Since I have a 4x4 grid and there's no option for that, what I am going to do instead is crosshairs. Crosshairs now makes a 4x4 grid, so 4 of my cube tiles are going to fit in each one of these quadrants. So Mandelbulb is off. I've changed the size to a 1 by 1 ratio. I'm just going to go 600 by 600 just to make this easy for our animating purposes. And now I need to zero out the camera. I can just go 0 to pitch, yaw, and roll. And then I need to set up my camera here. And through trial and error, I figured out the exact dimensions that I need. We're going to do a 4x4 grid. I'm going to have 16 primitive cubes, and each cube is going to be a 2x2 size. So to do that, I go up here to my camera, and I'm going to put in 1, tab, -9, tab, -1. Oops, not 41. -1, tab. X is 1 on the value of the target. The Y value is going to be 10, and the Z is -1. Should give me a distance, camera distance to target of 19. I can't really see anything, so let me, and meanwhile my roll has gone. There we go. Now I should be straight on and the exact distance away to make this work. Let me go over to objects down here. There's my primitive cube. Hit it once, it's going to put a cube right there. Cube. I first want to turn this to size 2 by 2 by 2, just because that's how I did this. There's my cube. That is going to be, actually, it starts out, if we look at these as a cube of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. This cube starts out in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 position. We want to move it to the 1 position right here. Fortunately, I can just go right in here and type in x -2, y 0, and then the z, make that 2, and now I've moved the block up, and we can see this block perfectly fits here in the corner. So these settings we have for the camera, which basically I did this entire exercise and then moved the camera to make it all fit, and then realized that these values are very close to round numbers, so I rounded them off and made it all work. So with these values right here, this should be perfect perspective. We've made our first block. Let's make another block 2. We're going to change it to block 2. We're going to go down here, box 2, and change our default width, height, depth, and now we're still in the 5th position, so we want to move up to 2. Block 2 is going to be, I believe I can get there by just putting in a 2. Boom. We've now positioned blocks 1 and 2, and you see that they are perfectly seamless, and it looks like one big larger block. Well, when we enter block 3, boom, and we'll, unfortunately, there's a lot of scrolling up and down here to get this to work. I could place 16 blocks first and then put them all in, especially if I had done this before and knew what I was doing. But if I'd done this before and knew what I was doing, I would not do this again. I would just use my previous settings and alter them. I'm going to include my settings for you so you can actually do that, but I recommend going in and doing this manually because you might learn something. Do what you want to do. I'm providing you the tools to take this further. Also, keep in mind that I developed this little technique, or thought of this idea, like 5 days ago, and I've done 2 variations of it, and I'm sure there's a lot of tweaking, especially on the camera settings and the eliminating shadows. But we'll get to that in a minute. So we have divided our image up into several parts, and now we're in the Mandelbulber, and we're going to place all of our blocks. After we place all of our blocks, then we're going to map those individual 16 pictures to each one of these individual 16 blocks. Then after we do that, we're going to play with the lighting and try to get rid of all the shadows. And then the final step will be animating and then rendering it all out. So we're deep into placing blocks. Let me just keep plugging through here. I got to take block 3 and I've got to plug it into, so it's going to go X of 4 and then a Z of 2. That should put it right up there. Although actually I guess I need an X of 2. Oops, sorry, 2, didn't I? Not 4. 2. There we go. Block 3 is placed. I'm going to place block 4, and then we'll put it in the background, and you'll see what we're doing here. So let's put in block 4, and we'll have a whole row. Block 4, we'll size it up. Speaking of sizing it up in blocks, I could have done this in Blender, and I could have mapped all of those pictures to the faces of a cube. That would have been a little bit more difficult, and I wanted to do this in Mandelbulber because, well, for many reasons. 1, because I wanted to do it in Mandelbulber, and 2, because it could be done in Mandelbulber if I just figured it out. So I figured it out, and I've done it in Mandelbulber. You could do this in After Effects, perhaps, or any other program as well. I had many options. I decided to go with Mandelbulber. Let me place this last, it's sized up. Let me place the last block. That's X in the 4 grid. Boom, and then move it up to the 2, 0. Boom. All right, we've got the first row, and you see in front of us it makes a perfect row. The edges fit nicely. You can see that there's some space here, and as the blocks move, we're going to have some blank space coming through here. And we're going to change the default textured background to instead go to our slices folder, and then that PNG we created, the square one, and we've got to do one thing real quickly. Map type, we're going to change to flat, and that, boom, gives us our picture on the behind the squares. Now, when these squares are moving past each other and there's a little cracks between them, the background image will show forth. It's not a perfect fix, but it's better than having just black or, God forbid, the default texture background. Okay, we have now created 4 blocks. We're just going to have to trudge through and place 4 more, then 4, then 4 more, exactly the same way we did the first 4 blocks. I am going to just motor through it and occasionally put up the settings as I do this, and you won't hear any commentary from me, and we're going to go about 1,000 miles per hour. So let's go. Going to primitives. and I have 4 boxes. So let me just 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. I just hopefully placed all 16 in my boxes. Yes, I have 16 boxes. I'm going to go in and adjust the size, change each one to 2, and then plug in the parameters and fill in all these holes. Right now, with the addition of the rest of the boxes, they're all piled on top of each other. You could have waited to do it one by one, or just plopped them all down and put in the settings, whichever floats your boat. And voila, we have filled in our grid with six squares, and for some reason this square right here shows a visible line in it. Let's take a break and see if we can figure that out. Okay, real quickly, what's causing this little crack right here is that we have one of these blocks who's just barely rotated. I changed it to 0, and now we have a smooth, seamless finish, and we are ready to start tiling all of our 16 images onto each of these 16 blocks. Congratulations. So now we are ready to start making 16 materials and mapping each one of those materials to one of those 16 images. If we just go into material editor here, we will simply go to use color texture from an image, select that, and simply go to our folder that has slices, images, open that up, and I'm going to select number 1 is going to be, well, for ease of use, PNG1. And since all of the textures are mapped to, since all the cubes are mapped to texture 1, material 1, we'll see that they all change. So we need to go and scroll all the way down to the mapping type. Instead of planar, funny enough, we're going to put cubic, and that should this is actually our 1 square. And how do we know that? Well, when we go back, when we look at our slices, we'll see that this thingy here, which mapped onto our Mandelbulber, doesn't look like much anything, is it? Does it? What we can, just for purposes of seeing something more interesting, let's go to number 8, and you'll see, boom, proof of principle. What we're going to do is simply, I'm going to go back to my first one. I'm going to save this material, and then I'm going to keep loading it and altering it and saving it, and that's the quickest way to get this. So save material as, I'm going to name this block 1, and then I'm just going to keep incrementing and adding, and I'm going to do 16 materials 16 times. So material, I should also call this block 1 here, block 1. Okay, material, save material, not edit, save material as block 1. Yes, I want to replace it. Now what I haven't done is gone to each individual cube and selected the material. So first let me create 16 of these materials, and then we'll come back and we'll do map them to 16 cubes. Okay, one thing that I want to make sure that you know, if you're going to actually go through all this and make 16 materials, is that it's a better idea to fix the first material and then save it and keep loading it and making the last little change you need to make, rather than assigning all the images to it and then going back and having to clean up 16 individual materials 16 times. So we've got the first material, the first image mapped to the first material. So let's go into the material editor and let's make this work for our purposes. First thing I want to do though, I want to turn off plastic and metallic specular reflections entirely. And what else can I do to this to make this not show a lot of issues? Yeah. If I take the shading to 0, what else can I do? This is the one area where I did not spend enough time on when I originally did this, so it's very possible that there are some improvements to be gained in this. I don't need surface color. I don't need colors from gradients. And then under effects, ray tracing, I probably don't want screen space on. Let me try ambient inclusion and then crank it up to, I believe 3 is going to be the sweet spot. 3. Now it'd be great if I could get rid of all shadows altogether, so I'm going to go to lights. We're getting crazy now. Light, and I'm going to turn off cast shadows and change the light to be straight on, trying to avoid as many shadows as possible in the cracks of these things. Penetrating lights is on, soft shadow. Honestly, I don't know, by making those shadows softer, hypothetically, when they do appear, they'll be super soft. Christoph would definitely be able to optimize this, but I am just a poor engineer cranking away on here, and I'm not even an engineer actually. I'm a musician and a writer. Why did I say engineer? Because I make fractals. Fractal engineer, I guess. Okay. Now that we have optimized both the material settings to minimize as many shadows as we can, and then we changed the global lighting to minimize as much shadows as we can, and keep in mind that that's a work in progress. I've not done that as well as it possibly could be done, but I'm the one doing it, so I'm doing my best, and I hope to learn from the comments and from the forum. By the way, check out Facebook if you're not on Facebook for fractals. Mandelbulber page is kick butt. Okay, let's go to our material editor. We have material 1 here. We're going to edit that material. I could just click on the editor. I'm going to save this as block 1, and I'm going to save over our previous block 1, and I think hopefully this is our best possible material, or at least this is what we've got for now. Okay, and I am going to duplicate this by really quickly. I'm going to do the first one, and then I'm going to power through them. We're going to load materials. I'm going to load that block that I just saved. I'm going to change it to block 2 at the top, and then I'm going to point to the second PNG 2. Open. Simple as that. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go back to materials, and I'm going to load material block 1 again, and I'm going to change it to 3, and I'm going to point to 3. Now I'm just going to do this 15 times, and boom, boom, and then I'm going to shut up and do that 16 total times. All right, here we go. bit tedious here, isn't it? Last one. Last material. I'm gonna call it 16. Gonna load up 16. Alright. We have now loaded up 16, or created 16 materials and loaded up each of the 16 PNGs with them. Now we get to assign each one of the materials to an object. Alright. Okay, now that we have mapped all of our materials to the various objects, we see that the shape shows our final image, although it's made up of individual blocks. Now we have completed a lot of tedious stuff. We have one more tedious thing to do. We're going to animate this thing, and the animating is not tedious, but unfortunately we have to assign the rotation of each of these objects, the X and Y of each one of these objects. We have to assign it to our keyframe parameters. So in this section we're going to animate. That's going to be done fairly simple by just going to each object and right-clicking on the X, Y, Z axis rotation and simply adding the keyframe animation. I am going to do that so many times, 16 times. Let me start all the way here at the bottom, and I'm just going to go right-click, add to keyframe animation, right-click, add to keyframe animation, and if I don't add a keyframe yet, this makes it a lot quicker because then the keyframe will not refresh every time I add a variable to it. So I can actually do this fairly quickly by just going add to keyframe animation each time, add to keyframe animation. Just keep scrolling through here. If I've already added one, it'll tell me remove, in which case I will not remove it. I just want to add it. So there's no way that we can mess this up short of clicking on the wrong box, which happens all the time. If you're doing 16 of these, it's likely you're going to end up adding the repeat instead of the XY rotation or something, or you'll end up anyway. Just add to keyframe animation. Sometimes you'll add to flight animation, which is fine. It won't hurt anything. But we want to add it to keyframe animation. If we don't add it to keyframe, there we go. See, now this one says remove from keyframe because we've already got it. That was box 10, the one we started with. So that was it. We got all 16. So let me click add keyframe animation, pull our window up a little bit here. All right. And now when we scroll down here, we'll see all of those rotations added to, and we'll scroll through here real quick and make sure that none of them says something weird. Rotation, X, Y, and Z. 16 of them, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. We got them all. That was it. That did not take long. All right. Now we're going to play. We can move these boxes in the X, the Y, or the Z axis. And I'll show you what each one of those does in turn. Okay, we have one keyframe. Just to check the keyframes, let's add one more keyframe. And now, that's it. We're going to have two keyframes, and this entire movement is going to be between the one and the second. We're going to rotate the X and the Y. So I've done a couple of, actually I've done about 30 of these, but of little variations. But let me show you real quick what rotating on the Y axis gets you. If we rotate each one of these blocks along the Y axis, we see them slowly separate and they're spinning. We go back over here to the big Z is going to be up and down, X is back and forth, and Y you cannot see because Y is going to spin each block like that. That's spinning it back and forth. That's going to be the Y.
This, we'll see, is going to be spinning along the y, or sorry, that's going to be the z axis. So either minus or plus rotations. 180, 90 degrees plus or minus. Let me show you another variation. Here's one with x's and y's going. So I have spinning along the x-axis and then also spinning on the z-axis, excuse me. So these here are spinning on the x, these rows, these four, whereas these four are spinning on the z-axis. So the possibilities are endless. And so what I want to do, knowing that there are 16 blocks, knowing that x is going to spin me up and down, z's back and forth, and y is going to be like a corkscrew of each one of these blocks, I simply just go through and I set a number. 0 is going to be the first number. Block 1 is going to rotate. It would have been great if all these blocks had been in, all these numbers had been in order instead of out of order. I simply add in a 90 on the z and do that all the way up and down. I've got a few of these already filled out. Let me pull them up. Let's take a look here. Oh, here's X180s twice. So we'll see, we got X180 and Y180. And we'll see all my keyframes. This one's in order too, which has a benefit. But you'll notice that my camera settings, these are my original camera settings, and they were close to what we're using now, very close. They're just off by a few hundredths, but I rounded them and there's no appreciable difference. Anyway, so here's, you'll see just 0, 180, 0, 180, 0, 180, 0, 180 for X and the Y values, with Z not changing. We find another variation, Z alternating. In this case, we've got Z with 90 degrees, 90 degrees, some of them are negative 90 degrees, going all the way through 16 keyframes. And what does that look like when we, this is my, the first one I did actually using this lemon Mandelbulb I made in Blender and Mandelbulber. Here we see, this is probably my favorite variation actually too, with the Z rotation, some going plus, some going minus. If you don't get the alternates right, these look like solid logs rolling together. So you want to make sure that these go contrary motion to break it up so they look like individual blocks. The possibilities are not endless because there's only so many variations between X and Y, but there are fairly many variations you could do. Okay, just one final thing. Don't forget, we're going to render this thing out when you're all done with your animating. You can have just the 2 keyframes. You can add a 3rd keyframe by hitting that first keyframe and adding it, and it'll have a perfect loop. It's going to loop anyway because we've only gone 90 degrees. But this way, the blocks will loop one way and then they'll roll back the other way. You can also do that in post, by the way, so you can save on your render time by just rendering it one way and then in post reverse it. Set your resolution to 3K, which is where we started, 3K by 3K, and that's pretty much it. You can play around with the brightness, gamma, contrast, saturation, and all that, or do it in post, but otherwise 100 frames per keyframe, play around with that, make bigger loops, longer loops, faster loops, just have fun, animate, and if you figure out better ways to kill the shadows, share those with me, please. Can't wait to see what you do. All right, I'm going to end it there. Now you know what to do. Plug in your X's and Y's, play around with it. I'm going to have some settings down below to my Google Drive account where you can take a look yourself. You don't have to plug in all this and do all this work, but if you do, it might be good for you. You might learn something. In the meantime, check me out at Facebook and on my Fractal webpage. This is Steve Sink for the Fractal Realms and Pagan Productions, and I'll see you later. Thanks.